today we have two components of the presentation as we've been doing, the mental component and the physical. And Palmer really wanted to work on gut health this time because of how important it is. So I was thinking about how the mind influences or not the gut. And I have a little quote. The mind does influence your gut health. And I want to tell you just a really short story. I can talk about this for hours, but I'm going to be 1 minute. 400 years ago, there was a lot of political turmoil. Sounds like anything familiar? Mm-hmm. And there was almost a war going on between science and the church. And the church was threatening to execute Galileo and Copernicus, that had discovered that perhaps the earth actually goes around the sun. All his books, all his writings were banned by the church. Medicine, physicians, and those that weren't physicians were wanting to dissect cadavers. And of course the church was having none of that because there's a soul in there, right? So a philosopher that's very, very intelligent named René Descartes had this wonderful phrase, "I think, therefore I am." And what he convinced the church is the only thing that is really real and precious is the mind. And that all that body stuff is just a mechanics and it has no importance. So that they didn't have to consider where the earth is located or consider if the body is opened or not, because it's just a mechanical thing. And by him convincing the church to do that, he allowed Galileo to keep working and not get executed, medicine to start dissecting cadavers to educate and to learn what the body's really doing, and the church kept our mind for hundreds of years. Psychology is only 100 and something years old. It stayed with the church exclusively for a very long time. What has happened with that is, for 400 years, we've totally split the mind from the body, as if it has nothing to do one with the other. To the point that science moved so far away from the mind that late 1800s, the materialists were actually saying that the mind is a component that comes from the physical and not the opposite. However, in the last 100 years, quantum physics, which is a real science, which has evidence-based research and testing, continues to demonstrate that the mind is everywhere. That the mind is actually where things initiate. That material will either become a particle or become light, depending on who's observing it. So a lot has changed. The thing is, we've been living 100 years with this total mind-body split. And it's very hard for people to change such an exaggerated paradigm, right? Total split. But what's been happening the last 100 years is you have quantum mechanics, you have psychoneural immunology, you have epigenetics, a whole bunch of scientists, a whole bunch of science that through research, so Descartes is philosophy, Newton is philosophy. Through research, they're discovering that the mind has a lot to do with absolutely everything that's happening to you. So, one researcher, Candace Pert, maybe, I don't know exactly the year, psychoimmunology is only 40 years old, began 1975. And Dr. Candace Pert discovered that there are these hormones that are going all through your body all the time, called neuropeptides. And it seems that the only function they have is to communicate to all your cells, your emotions. Why would this be important? For your cells to know what's happening in your emotions. Why do you think that would be important?
It knows how to trigger on which responses to trigger on.
Yeah. Your cells go, oh, okay, there's a threat here. We better pump more blood. We better hurry up. Oh, there's a lot of stress. Probably not a good time to digest. Let's just hold that food in for a few hours until there's more relaxed environment so we can focus on digestion, because digestion takes a lot of energy. The thing is, she also realized that it is only the emotions that triggers the cells, not what's really happening out there. So if yesterday, when I was nervous that I didn't have very much time to do this presentation, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is the end. They're never going to let me go. Come again. They're going to think I'm an idiot. They're going to think I don't know my material. They're never going to invite me back. How do you think my body would react to that? My tiny stomach ache would probably become much larger. I'd be in the bathroom half the afternoon and I wouldn't get any of this done, right? But I have another way, same situation. I can think, ooh, I can do this, I can do this. It's, I got this stuff, I've got this stuff. Let me see what I've got. Oh, this is gonna be cool. Let's see how much I can get done in 2 hours. How did the body respond? What is the difference? My emotions and what meaning I make out of it. So Candace Pert discovered these neuropeptides, which she called molecules of emotion. She actually spent 10 years knowing they existed, but she was so afraid to tell the rest of the scientists molecules of emotion, because she knew they're all going to be like, what? No, it's a split. What are you talking about? There is no correlation, And so she did 10 years of research so that she could say, no, look, before she shared what she had discovered. And Candace Pert says the molecules of emotion run every system in the body. They run every system in the body. A feeling sparked in your mind will release a peptide through the body. Peptides regulate every aspect of your body. They regulate your blood pressure. They regulate from whether you're going to digest your food properly to whether you're going to destroy a tumor cell. That's how powerful your feelings are. So, additionally to doing the food and going, okay, I'm going to check if this food works for me, if this food works for me, be aware in what mental state are you in. Is there a lot of family stuff going on? Are you, and not so much that the family stuff, but how are you interpreting it, right? Because it will affect your digestion. Of course, it affects your sleep. It will affect your blood pressure. So, one of the places that we can work on today is regret. Because think of someone who spends years reminding themselves of that lost opportunity. If I would have taken that job, I would already be retired now, and I'm just How is the body? Kind of depleted. How is the immune system? The immune system's like, yeah, we're on it, let's do this. Or the immune system's like, there's no hope. He took the wrong turn 10 years ago. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. So regret is a big one to control. I'm going to teach you today how to do that. Because there's a way we make ourselves sick. And there's a way that we actually really regret something and feel bad. So first let's figure out what is regret, okay? Regret is one. First, you have a choice. You can decide to live here or live there. You can take that job or take this other job. You can say yes to that situation or something your daughter or son asked you to do, or you can say no, right? In order to begin a regret, you actually have to have a choice, right? I was thinking as I was driving here, one of my very good friends lived in Warsaw when she was young, when she was in her 20s. And it was during communist time. So during communist time, you didn't choose where you got to live. So she makes no regrets there. What regrets? She had no choice. It wasn't her fault. She can blame them, but it wasn't her fault. But any time in our lives that we have a choice, sometimes it's not going to turn out how we wanted it to. And that's what creates regret. We choose something and it affects us in some way, right? The consequences of our choice somehow violated a value of ours or an outcome or a goal. Like, that's not going to take me to where I want to go. So then what happens? We feel bad. And that part is totally natural. Now, once we notice like, shouldn't have done that, we have a choice again. We can choose to keep regretting. And if we choose to keep regretting and keep ruminating, oh my gosh, if I would have just done that, I would have had enough money for this, da, 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 we can make ourselves sick. And there's actually a way that we do that. It has 2 key ingredients. 1, we focus and attend to the unpleasant consequences of our choice. Because of this, I don't have as much money as I could have, and da 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 da, and we focus on all the negatives of our choice. And to add fire to it, we focus on the hypothetical benefits of that other choice. And I say hypothetical because we don't know. We think that other choice is only paved with flowers. And we focus on just the good parts of that one. If I would have, if I would have married him, if I would have taken that job, if I would have, if I would have stayed doing exercise more often, my MS wouldn't be so bad. But we only focus on the hypothetical benefits. And there's another way. And the other way is actually to balance it. Because what we usually focus on is unpleasant consequences of our choice. Look, we have to pay because we took this bad choice. And the hypothetical benefits of the other. But if we want to really balance this out, we have to look at the benefits of our choice. Not only the benefit of having chosen whatever, to live in Watsonville. Well, it's cheaper, so then I have more money, so we can travel more, and then, but also what other opportunities opened because of that choice. That's the big piece. Well, actually, since I live in a smaller community, I know my neighbors. Yeah, I could live in a city and I would know no one, or da-da-da. Look at also the opportunities that open because of that first step. Maybe that first step doesn't look good, didn't feel good, but a whole bunch of other things opened up because of it. That if I had taken the other choice, it wouldn't even be on my radar, right? That's important to take into account. And also, important to take into account the unpleasant consequences of the other choice. Right? This, for example, you think, oh, I should have exercised more. Look, because I didn't exercise, my MS got worse and da-da-da. How much time and effort is involved in exercise? How much time and effort is involved in not having such a social environment around you because you spend every afternoon in the gym? Right? But we're just thinking, oh, I'd be so much physically better. Yeah, but what about socially better, right? What about stress level better? I have clients that want to do everything. Oh, I should be doing the gym, and I should be going to this, and I should also be going to that. And I was like, all right, how are your kids' relationship with you if you actually would have done all those things? Probably see them about 10 minutes before they went to bed. Yeah. So what is the lost benefits of that other one? What is the unpleasant consequences? So maybe the next 4 years when your kids are 2, 5, and 7, you don't have so much time to exercise. But you established a really good relationship with your kids. That continues to be a really good relationship when they're in their teens and in their 20s. Rather than only focusing on, oh, I have such a great body. Yeah. Right? So it's focusing on all 4. And that's what's on that page there. What I would like to do, just because of time, if someone would like to share regret, and I don't want to invite you to give us your biggest regret. We'll work on that individually. But a regret that you have, like, oh, I should have, if I would have, if I wouldn't have, that you'd like us maybe to peace out.
Well, how about one that I already figured out?
Okay.
So I had regretted this one relationship that I had.
Yes.
Really regretted it.
Okay.
And blamed him for a lot of things in my life till I read a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt that said something to the effect of, no one can make you feel inferior without your permission. And I went, wow, I let him do that to me. But needless to say, I still regretted the relationship for quite some time until I was able to find a benefit of that relationship. And the benefit I found out is that I had to experience the bad of him to be able to appreciate the good of my husband. Because had I not experienced that, I don't think I could see all the goodness in him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, yeah, I don't regret that experience anymore. I did for a long time. I accepted my choices in it and everything, but I wasn't able to find the benefit of it until I met my husband. So
Until you met and you found,
Yeah.
oh, wait a minute.
yeah.
It actually made me so much more grateful.
Yeah.
Even on your worst day of your husband, you're probably like, this is peanuts in
Yeah,
comparison.
it's like, sometimes I go, why am I so upset with him? He's really a good guy. This is nothing compared to,
The unpleasant consequences of the other,
yeah.
or
So
whatever, yeah.
it's, I don't have too many, most of my regrets deal with my food.
So let's bring one of
Versus-
those out. What
Well-
do you regret food-wise?
Well, just, how much I've abused my body and my mind because of my obsession with food.
Okay, so
Which is
you know the
alcohol.
unpleasant consequences of that choice.
Mm-hmm.
You said your mind and your body, right?
Yeah.
And the hypothetical benefits if you would have been more food mindful?
Well, I haven't thought of that. Hypothetical benefit.
If you,
Well, I'd
the
have
opposite.
a better body. I know a lot of people who have beautiful bodies and are still extremely insecure. Actually surprised me because I thought, how could anyone with a beautiful body hate their bodies? Not realizing that they're just on the opposite end of the
It's the
disease that I
same
have.
continuum.
It's like, wow. Because I remember my friend and I joined a women's support group for low self-esteem. And we were the only two heavy people in that support group. And we left that first day going, can you believe all those women have low self-esteem? What's up with that? We just couldn't believe that. But our society puts a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And
So, if you would have put that same pressure on yourself, the unpleasant consequences of being very body orientated, right? Right foods.
I might have been even unhealthier inside because
Exactly.
I'm discovering that people who, because I'm a compulsive overeater, and the people who have anorexia or bulimia actually put way more stress on their bodies
Yes.
inside.
Yes.
The same stress right up here, just we deal with it in a different way.
Exactly.
And so overall, I have better health than a lot of them do. And when I was younger, I would have never thought that possible, ever.
Exactly.
And so, it's like, gosh. And I can remember thinking, I could never throw up. And I still can't, But I did not know all the impact of purging yourself has on the inside of your body up through even the
Exactly.
mouth.
So that has a lot of negative consequences.
Yeah.
Also, someone who's always like very, very conscious, body conscious, believes that they have to say like that, believes that their husbands are with them because of it, believes they can't even have a Sunday morning in flip-flops, right? There's a lot more pressure. I work with several clients who look fantastic and they have major migraines because there's this need for perfection. I just have to do it all. If I can just get all of this and do everything perfect, if I'm perfect, then I'll be loved. Whoa, that's not the way, right? It opens up a lot of other issues as well. And what are the benefits of not being, of eating whenever? Benefits of your
eating
choice.
whenever.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose if you're not a compulsive overeater and you can just
No. Allow your choice. You made a choice. What are the benefits of that choice?
I don't really see any
Anybody have a benefit?
Very happy in the moment,
Yeah,
eating something delicious.
happy in the moment,
Comfort.
comfort.
Yeah, but that moment only lasts for so long and then.
There's a
the
moment of it.
regrets.
Do you think this
Yeah.
person has moments of gratification?
Sure. I suppose so.
Could, but
I don't
probably
see it.
migraines is because they never, ever, ever, they have such a need for control that they don't have these moments of, so looking at all of it, right? So the healthier choice, once you go like, ooh, that wasn't a good choice, right? Is integrate, understand the benefits of the choice you did take. You have an instant way of reducing pressure. Not the best way, you have an instant way. And the consequences, though, of it, probably not as healthy for you, or then you have to do something for this instant gratification. Once you look at both of these and integrate it, okay, it helped me because it, that moment doesn't feel good, and then afterwards I don't feel so good. Okay, so I've got both. Then you actually can move on and make different choices next time. And if you make the same choice, you understand, oh yeah, okay, I chose this rather than that other one. Maybe what I could do is I notice that the benefit of it, maybe I can do another choice that gives me the same benefit. Right? Or maybe a choice that doesn't have as big consequences the next time. But you are really aware of this rather than regret is comparing with the other choice all the time. Right? So 2 little things I wanted you guys to really leave today with. All of this is about choice. So remember that. This is an NLP, I do my trainings in hypnosis and NLP. NLP presupposition is one of the facts is that says, having choice is better than not having choice. And because of the fact that we are in a society that we choose more and more, we're going to make mistakes. Actually, my friend from Warsaw would always tell me, she goes, so much easier in Warsaw. You go to the store and there's like 1 type of yogurt. You come here and there's like 10 and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Is this going to be good for me? Is it better this one or this one? Or, the fact that we have choice, let's celebrate it and know that that's going to mean that sometimes it's not the best one. And the second, and this one's an important one, is in that moment that you chose to eat that thing, in that precise moment, you were actually making the best choice you had at that moment. With the resources you had, if your mind is like, no, it's not the moment to go, oh, let me make myself a carrot and it's I need to help myself with this. And know that it was. I mean, even one of my teachers of NLP would say, if someone straps bombs around himself and goes into a bus and blows himself up, you have to understand that it was the best choice that person thought at that moment with the resources they had. Always. Never criticize someone's choice. At that moment, they thought it was the best choice. We don't know that his family was being threatened. We don't know that he thought that was the only solution because no one was hearing. We don't know, but we need to begin to assume, and assume for ourselves. That thing I did 20 years ago? Yeah, I can feel it now. But you know what, 20 years ago, with what I knew about life, and what I knew about where the economy was going, and what I knew about love, and what I knew about priorities, it was my best choice. Would I choose different now? Oh yeah, but probably because I learned from these 20 years. Alrighty. So, be mindful for your health.
All right. What does your gut have to do with autoimmune conditions like MS? Turns out, just about everything. So have you heard of Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine? About 2,500 years ago, he said, or he's quoted as saying, all disease begins in the gut. But modern medicine and science is finally catching up to what Hippocrates knew way back when. So I like to start at the beginning, and that is with some important facts about your gut. Because you hear the term gut, I didn't even know what it meant, really. So let's look at that. Your gut is actually your large and your small intestine combined. And when you put them together end to end, it's about 25 feet long. And it's actually an inner tube. Imagine it starts with your mouth and ends at the other end. But if you stretch it all out, it's about 25 feet long. This is a fact that blew me away. The inner lining of your gut that protects your insides from the outside world is only 1 cell thick. 1 cell thick. And if you were to spread out that 25-foot inner tube, it would cover a doubles tennis court, or about 3,000 square feet. Imagine that. Did you know that your largest microbiome, you have about 7 in your body, but your very largest one is in your gut? It's about 100 trillion microbes, which is 10 times the number of cells we have in our entire body. In fact, when it comes down to DNA, we learned that we have 23,000 genes, but when you look at our microbiome, those 100 trillion microbes, they have, let's see, how much more DNA? 10 times the amount of cells, and 99% of our DNA is actually microbial, whereas, it's 8 million genes compared to 23,000 genes that are human. So weighing the difference between human cells and bacterial cells, it turns out we're way more microbial than we are human, which just absolutely blows me away. So what does your microbiome do? Well, it fights pathogens and it keeps your immune system in balance. Did you know that most of your immune system, it resides in your gut? In fact, 75% of your immune system is housed in the lining of your gut. So think about the importance of that. It is the interface between the inside world, the outside world. So maintaining the integrity of your gut helps to maintain the integrity of your immune system. When it comes to autoimmune conditions, we know these are immune system disorders. So we need to really be focused on the gut. Well, what does the microbiome do besides all of these other important functions with your immune system? Its main function is to digest your dietary fiber. So the fiber that you eat doesn't get digested in your stomach. It actually feeds the microbes that are living inside your gut. And guess what, if you don't eat enough fiber? Those gut bugs start eating the lining of your gut. No kidding. So really important to make sure you're getting adequate dietary fiber. Just a fast fact about fiber. Turns out that the average American is eating about 5 grams of fiber per day. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors ate up to 135, 150 grams of fiber per day. Now, we can't quite equate ourselves with our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Our lives are different, but they didn't suffer from these autoimmune conditions. So there's something that we can learn from our ancestors. And when it comes to the difference between our microbiomes and their microbiomes, imagine that a healthy microbiome looks like a lush rainforest. It's teeming with diversity. It's got all different types of bacteria, viruses, parasites, yeast. They're all living in a harmonious balance. You got a lot of diversity and a lot of them. When it comes to the Western or modern microbiome, it looks more like a parched desert. It's just not teeming with life. It looks really, really depleted and sad. And when it comes to our health, we know that autoimmune conditions are way on the rise. And scientists are now investigating then is it that we're missing all these microbes? Is it that our microbiomes have become so imbalanced that we're not able to fend off these invaders or build tolerance with the things in our lives so that we can be in harmony, and instead we end up fighting ourselves? So that's an open question, but there's much evidence that we could learn much from our ancestors. Remember the total body burden that we talked about? We know our genetics play about a 10% or up to a 10% role in our health outcomes. So when it comes to MS, and you think about your inheritance from your mother, your grandfather, whomever it is, we can only blame about 10% of the reasons why we develop an autoimmune condition on our ancestors. It turns out that these lifestyle factors like food, infections, gut health is the missing one, hormone imbalance, toxins, and stress account for up to 90% of our health outcomes. So those environmental factors or fights is really the name of the game when it comes to recovering from autoimmune conditions. So once our buckets get filled with these other factors like the sad foods, like infections or Lyme disease, and our hormones become imbalanced, maybe we've got heavy metals and mercury in our mouth and so forth, maybe we have a life of chronic stress, the last element in the equation is this leaky and imbalanced gut. So the imbalanced gut means your microbiome is not balanced and harmonious. For some reason, it's missing key microbes. And then what happens? Things spill. And that is the autoimmune cascade. So today we're going to be talking about the leaky and imbalanced gut. And I want to start out with some great news. In 2011, Alessio Fasano, a researcher from Harvard University, found the third leg of the three-legged stool when it comes to the autoimmune equation. This is huge news, and it should be front-page news. So we know genetics make up some of the responsibility for why people develop autoimmune conditions. We now understand that environmental factors like medications, pesticides, sugar, wheat, et cetera, represent the lion's share of the autoimmune risk. But there's another factor in the equation that ends up making it a three-legged stool, and that is the development of a leaky gut. What do I mean by leaky gut? So the scientific term for leaky gut is hyperintestinal permeability. Remember when I told you that the lining of our gut is only one cell thick? That is a really, really vulnerable, very small barrier between us and the outside world. And any number of things can cause our guts to become inflamed and then leaky. And you can envision, I love this metaphor, that our gut is like a cheesecloth, right? You spread that whole thing out, it's 3,000 square feet. It's all tucked up inside us. When we eat things that inflame that lining, we start to get tears in the cheesecloth. Now, normally, our intestines are where we absorb our nutrients. So we want to be able to absorb vitamins and minerals and things from our foods and the supplements we take. But when we start dealing with these heavy loads of inflammation, like gluten, which is a big culprit, which we'll learn more about, and medications and other things, we really increase the inflammation in the gut, and that leads to an imbalanced microbiome. Those are the bacteria inside our gut, but also we start to develop bigger tears in the cheesecloth. And that's when, and this is important that you understand what happens in the autoimmune cascade. So let's say we've been eating cereal for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, and maybe pizza for dinner with a beer, all gluten containing, right? In every single person who eats gluten, it causes some degree of a leaky gut. Now, that might not be a big deal to someone who doesn't have autoimmune susceptibility, but for those of us with autoimmune proclivities, eating gluten is really going to be a big problem, because it's going to tear holes in your cheesecloth. So let's examine what happens when you eat gluten, for example. And it's one of many, but I'm picking on it because it's the biggest culprit. So when we eat gluten and it tears holes in the cheesecloth, we have big holes in our intestine, bigger than they should be in that one cell lining. So now you've got a big hole there. And undigested food particles and bacterial waste can begin to cross from what's supposed to stay inside your gut, it's now leaking into your bloodstream. And when that happens, your immune system, just doing its job, and by the way, sitting right on the front lines of where this is happening, which is where the action is, right? Is it a friend or is it an enemy? Well, when gluten gets into the bloodstream, where it's not supposed to be, it becomes an enemy. So your immune system creates what are called antibodies. And antibodies, you can think of them as soldiers. And these soldiers, just doing their job, are going around your bloodstream shooting the gluten, because that's what they do. They tag it and then, okay, tag, 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 shoot, 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 kill all the gluten. Well, when you mount an antibody response like this, it's a big deal. And you produce a whole lot of antibodies. And so these antibodies going through your bloodstream, shoot, shoot, shoot the gluten, they kill it all. Guess what happens? In a surprising twist of fate, our human tissue actually resembles at a molecular level the gluten molecule. So this is what's called molecular mimicry. For somebody with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is autoimmune thyroid, and that's the most common autoimmune condition, the thyroid gland at a molecular level looks like the gluten molecule. And in MS, your myelin sheath looks suspiciously like the gluten molecule. So now you've got all of these soldiers amped up looking for a fight, and whatever your proclivity is, if it's rheumatoid arthritis, it's going to be the joints. If it's MS, it's the brain, the myelin sheath, your spine. If it's Hashimoto's, it's your thyroid. They get either caught in the crossfire, which is bystander activation, that's one of the mechanisms, but this molecular mimicry is one of the biggest mechanisms for actually how the autoimmune mechanism works.
I'm just wondering, okay, if it's going around attacking gluten and the myelin sheath, that looks like it. If you stop taking gluten, why would it stop attacking the myelin sheath?
Thank you so much for setting me up perfectly, John. Let's look at the second part of this fantastic news. What does this mean? The implication of this equation, 1 + 1 = 3, so how do we flip the equation? It's possible to reverse autoimmune conditions, and this is what I did. So the steps are, you can't do anything about the genes that you're dealt. You're always going to have that 10% risk of getting an autoimmune condition. The key in this entire equation, the big key, is to find and remove your environmental triggers. And that's what FIGHTS serves to do, is to help you remember. It's food, infections, gut health, hormones, toxins, and stress. You have to look at each of those categories. And in the food category, the biggest culprit is gluten. And for me, when I found in 2010 my big trigger of having non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and I just went cold turkey on gluten in October of 2010, I've never had another MS symptom ever since. At the same time, I spent a good several months working on healing my gut. But the biggest thing was take out the bad stuff, put in the good stuff, and keep at it for life. So to answer your question, it is that simple. Now, not everybody has gluten as their primary trigger, so I want to be really clear that this is not a just remove gluten and you're going to be dancing kind of deal. This is a, that might work for you, and you might have to dig deeper. But the implication of the equation is that it's possible to halt and reverse autoimmune conditions if you find your environmental factors, your triggers, remove them, and heal your gut. I think this should be front page news. This is so exciting to me. Now, figuring out what your triggers are, the devil's in the details, right? So let's look at the gut specifically, at what harms your gut. And these factors are a short list of the many, many ways that we harm our gut. So I included the top 5 biggies. And the first is a standard American diet, abbreviated perfectly to the SAD diet, centerpiece of which is processed food, sugar, gluten, dairy. I'm going to include, for people that have autoimmune proclivities, the big 5 are going to be gluten, cow dairy, some people don't do well with eggs, soy, and corn. Those are the big 5. Sugar actually shuts your immune system down for about 6 hours after you eat it. So those are the things that are going to be harming your gut maybe the most, okay? Antibiotics, this is huge. The word antibiotic, anti means against, biotic, life, against life. Have you ever taken a course of antibiotics? Do you know what it's doing? It's wiping out all of your gut bacteria, not just the bad guys, but all of it. It is a big, big deal. So when it comes to our microbiome, we want a lush rainforest microbiome, not a wiped out one. So my advice is only take antibiotics if you have a life-threatening kind of situation. Really examine the need for taking them. And if you need to take them, make sure that you're taking a probiotic, which is for life, along with the antibiotic. That's a big, big deal when it comes to protecting the health of your gut. Medications. This just seems kind of counterintuitive. Doesn't the healthcare system want to protect me? I get medications from my doctor because I have symptoms and I want to feel better. Well, medications provide quick fix symptom relief. That's the upside. But the side effects, which aren't really side effects, they're the effects of the medication, have tremendous unwanted effects. And some of those include becoming triggers for autoimmune conditions. So I have a story of a doctor who I've interviewed. Her name is Jill Carnahan. She's a functional medicine physician in Colorado. She unfortunately had breast cancer when she was 25 and going to medical school, and she went the standard of care, which was to do chemotherapy for her breast cancer. And once she went through the whole course of treatment, at the other end of it, she thought she was in the free and clear and life was good again and she was just going to heal. But it turns out that the chemotherapy destroyed her gut and she developed an autoimmune condition called Crohn's disease. So medications, hugely implicated as a top trigger of autoimmune conditions. Be judicious in what you need to take, whether it's anti-inflammatories or steroids. See if you can find a better, more holistic, natural way. There's lots coming out about CBD, cannabidiol, as the anti-inflammatory, non-hallucinogenic part of the marijuana plant in terms of helping with inflammation. It's safe for children. So things to investigate.
So CBD is good?
Yes, as an anti-inflammatory.
And what does that stand for?
Cannabidiol. Canabidol, abbreviated as CBD. So organic,
you can
of
get
course.
it at a marijuana store.
But you want to make sure you get organic and that you're working with a doctor that knows how to use it and what dosage and so forth and so on. So really important.
Can CBD be it can be good or bad depending on what it is or what?
I've never heard of anything bad about it, but I'm no expert in the subject, so I don't, can't offer more information except look into it. What I am suggesting is consider alternatives to just reaching for a medication. I'll give an example of something that we probably all reach for. Ibuprofen. When you get a headache, causes a leaky gut almost immediately. So the benefit is you might, have a better head. Long-term use, not a good idea. I've known people that have taken Tylenol PM every night of their life for more than 20 years, and the gut that they end up creating is, imagine how imbalanced that can be. So one more point about medications. Lupus, a common autoimmune condition affecting many women, there are 46, I think, minimum medications that are implicated in causing lupus. So just beware, the things that you reach for, that just because your doctor gives it to you doesn't mean it's without negative effects. So just be cautious about that. Pesticides. This is really the reason to choose organic food, biodynamic, sustainable, as harmonious with nature as possible, especially when it comes to meat. The majority of our crops today, whether it's wheat, corn, and soy, which I don't recommend for folks with autoimmune conditions, are sprayed with glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, which is produced by Monsanto. It's a pesticide and herbicide. And now even there are crops, seeds, that contain Roundup built in, so that when they plant those crops, they don't get weeds and they don't get pests. But what happens when we eat the produce that's been grown with those pesticides on it? It gets in our stomach and completely harms the lining of our gut. So glyphosate, the active ingredient in this pesticide, is known to create a leaky gut. But it's not just the vegetables. The animals are fed these crops, right? The wheat, the corn, the soy, they're given to the animals. In addition, the animals that are not grass-fed, not wild, are raised with growth hormones and antibiotics to fatten them up. In fact, I think I may have this fact correct. You may need to check me on this, but I think 70% of all antibiotic use in this country is used for animals, not for humans. And we eat those animals. Think about what that does to our guts. So a really cautionary tale about choosing the right food, especially your meat. If you avoided all of those things, let's say you had a perfect diet, you never took medications, never took antibiotics, you're eating organic all the time, life is great, your bucket isn't that full, but you've got chronic stress. You're worried, you're upset, you're anxious, you're stressed out a lot of the time. Sounds like modern life in general, right? Chronic stress by itself can create a leaky gut and an imbalanced microbiome. But who among us just has stress? We probably have some lethal combination of all of the above, like D, all of the above, right? So I want you to be mindful about the things that you're putting into your body and mind that are going to be harming your gut. Let's talk about the flip side of this, because you can heal your gut, and this is super exciting. So even though we may have decades or a lifetime of living this way, we can turn the ship around. You just need to know what to do. And the first thing is, which is not on this list, but I really want to be clear about it, it's stop doing the things that are harming your gut. So when people talk about putting out a fire, the first thing they're going to do is stop putting gasoline on the fire. And it sounds like common sense, but it's really important. Before you put out the fire, stop pouring gasoline on it. Get rid of the sad foods. We've talked about this before. Got to get rid of the processed food, the sugar, the gluten, the dairy. Give that 30-day food vacation a try, where you're going to give up those foods that are the usual culprits for at least 30 days, add them back in. You may be okay with eggs. Maybe you can do goat dairy instead of cow, but you need to figure it out for yourself. Everybody's different. So that's step one, stop doing the bad stuff. And what to do on the good side? The paleo template diet, I don't subscribe to the one-size-fits-all that everybody should or would be well served on the same particular diet, but the one that seems to have the most research, the most acceptance amongst functional medicine community of people who have recovered from autoimmune conditions like me, is do what our ancestors did. Get rid of the processed food, And when you strip it away, you're eating more in harmony with nature, and you're eating whole foods, and you're eating organically, and you're getting rid of grains and sugar, that really looks like a Paleolithic diet, which is basically meat, fish, eggs for people that can tolerate them, and vegetables, lots of vegetables, and really good healthy fats like avocado. And the third on the list is coconut oil. Ample amounts of coconut oil. It nourishes the lining of your gut. It's great for your brain. You can cook at higher heat with coconut oil than with olive oil. So definitely, add the coconut oil to the mix. It also is protective against Alzheimer's.
Does coconut water, if you're going to have cereal or something, is coconut water a good thing to take with it?
So my take on coconut water is that that's a high glycemic or high in sugar load for the body, and I would say in moderation. Maybe a better option would be to have coconut milk on your cereal. And when you say cereal, I'm assuming you don't mean grains, that maybe you mean
Oatmeal?
chopped up nuts. Some people can tolerate oats. Make sure if you're going to have oatmeal that it's certified gluten-free, and it's the slow cooking variety, not the quick cooking variety. So you want the type that's, I haven't had it in so long, I forget what it's called.
Old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned
Steel
or
cut.
steel cut.
Steel cut.
That is the term I'm looking for, is steel cut. So just make sure that anything that you're eating is going to digest very slowly, and when you add healthy fats to it, you're actually going to slow down the digestion. That's actually better for you. So, second one, add more fiber. More fiber. We all could benefit from eating more fiber. And when it comes to autoimmune, I'm not talking about beans, because often the lectins inside beans, which are natural to the plants, are actually not so great for the lining of our guts for those of us with autoimmune proclivities. So I'm talking about plants, green, leafy green vegetables. There's also fiber that you can buy in powdered form, whether it's acacia fiber, there's psyllium seed husk, there's chia seeds, there's flax seeds. Make sure you grind them up. You buy them organic, grind them up. I add them to smoothies and other things like that so that I'm increasing my fiber load, but also just steaming up, great amounts of vegetables. Broccoli, really great for increasing your fiber load.
For fiber load, taking things like Metamucil and that, would you recommend that? Is that okay?
I don't know enough about Metamucil to comment on it. I would say that seems to me suspect in the sense that it might be processed. I don't know what type of fiber is in there. I don't know how much sugar they add. Make sure whatever you're using is sugar-free, unprocessed, and as natural as possible. So Metamucil gets my radar up. Like, I'm not sure if that's a good one, but your grocery stores here in Santa Cruz, lots of really good options. So check it out. And by the way, the people that work in the supplement department at places like Whole Foods are fantastic resources. You want to talk with them. You want to get to know them. You want to rely on them for information. Ask them, hey, I heard I'm supposed to be eating more fiber. What do you recommend? And I want it organic. They'll take you to the sources, and there's more stuff that you can ask them about here. But just get your fiber up. Yes?
So when you say get your fiber up, how many grams of fiber is recommended at the minimum?
At the minimum, okay. At the minimum. Let's see. I'm going to give you the maximum, which is I'll call it a goal to shoot for 50 grams a day. I don't want to set you up for failure, because that's going to be difficult to do on a daily basis. But I would say if you can stretch, if we're only getting 5 to 15 grams a day, see what you can do to double or triple that. Your gut bugs eat and thrive on fiber. And that's one way of monitoring how you're feeling and, symptom relief, as well as energy levels. You don't want your microbiome, your gut bugs, eating you. You want them doing what they're supposed to do, which is eating dietary fiber. So more vegetables, and keep doing that. In addition, fermented foods, there are more probiotics in fermented foods like sauerkraut. For example, a forkful of sauerkraut has more beneficial gut bugs, or bugs that are supposed to be thriving and living in our gut, than an entire bottle of probiotics. So if you don't have problems with eating fermented foods, see if you can get some in you every single day. Even a forkful will really do wonders.
So kefir is a fermented thing, right?
It is. Kefir is fermented. Not everybody does okay with goat dairy, so there are alternatives. One is I know Staff of Life has this because I was just there, is a fermented raw goat kefir. So if you're okay with goat, that is one option. Another option is coconut yogurt and coconut kefir. So
I don't know, I've looked for coconut kefir. I even looked for it online and I can only seem to find recipes for it. I'm not one that's going to do a recipe for that. Have you found it where you can buy it?
I have only found coconut kefir at one store in my lifetime. And that store is in Fairfax, California, called Good Earth.
Oh, okay.
There's also one in Mill Valley, and they have a wonderful coconut kefir. I'm just making sure it's not a coconut yogurt. I believe you can drink it. So it's not a practical solution, you're right.
Oh, I have relatives in Fairfax.
There you go. Ask them to check it out.
Go visit them.
The point is, do what you can to get fermented foods and things like coconut yogurt. Now, when I say yogurt, I mean plain, unsweetened. If you want it sweet, add stevia. I brought in my bottle of organic stevia drops last time. That's a really great option. It doesn't spike your blood sugar. It's okay if you have, diabetic tendencies. So stevia is the one sugar that I recommend using. But get those fermented foods in. The one caveat is if you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or SIBO, sometimes when you have fermented foods, it actually causes a little bit more digestive distress. So not everybody is okay just with eating a lot of fermented foods. Try it. I mean, everything that we talk about here is experimentation. See what happens for you. Try it, see how you do. Probiotics, enzymes, and stomach acid. So in addition to eating fermented foods, I recommend probiotics like a multivitamin. They don't necessarily repopulate your gut flora. They go through you, but they communicate with your gut. They have, I don't know if it's a nice handshake or what they do, but they pass along good messages, beneficial stuff. So as I mentioned, the people at Whole Foods know what they're doing and could recommend a probiotic with multi-strains and see if you can get something in maybe the 50 billion colony-forming units or CFUs. So ideally, 50 billion colony-forming units, something with multiple strains, and there are two types that I really, really like. One is a yeast-based probiotic, which sounds crazy. It's called Saccharomyces boulardii, or S. boulardii for short. And at the end, I have some resources, so you don't need to write it down how to spell that. But it turns out you don't have to refrigerate it, but it has a lot of beneficial effects in research that it actually helps to balance things out and do other positive things for your body. If you ever need to take antibiotics, make sure you take Saccharomyces boulardii with the antibiotics. But even if you're not taking antibiotics, this yeast-based organism is really beneficial for your health. And the second one, which is relatively new, is a soil-based probiotic. And there's a brand called Prescript Assist that gets some really good reviews. So those are just a couple things for you to consider. As for enzymes,
Did you say soy or soil?
soil,
As in
thank
ground,
you.
soil.
As in ground, as in the good earth before it becomes depleted. This is why gardening is so good for us. When we dig our hands in the soil and get in there, it's actually communicating with our bodies somehow. And I don't know if it's through the skin, but these are really good things where we should be connecting with the earth and the soil. So thank you for asking, not soil.
And so the probiotics, are they refrigerated or can you get it in a capsule?
Great question on whether or not you refrigerate probiotics. Some will say that they're shelf stable, meaning you don't need to put them in the fridge, just keep them cool. So make sure you understand what to do with the type that you get.
So do you spoon it, or is it,
Capsules.
are there capsules?
Capsules.
Okay.
Person I talked to at Newly for I bought them from said that they had a whole lot of different probiotics, some refrigerated, some not. And what she said is, if you buy one that we have refrigerated, then refrigerate it. If you buy one that we do not have refrigerated, it's probably
Perfect.
You probably don't need to be.
That's right. And more consumers are demanding shelf stable because we travel and it's sometimes not so convenient to keep things cold all the time. So you're going to find more and more just on the shelf. Yeast-based probiotics like S. boulardii do not need to be refrigerated in any event, so you won't find them in the refrigerated section. But again, Staff of Life, New Leaf, Whole Foods, these people can really help you find the best ones for you. So I encourage everybody to have those conversations.
So, would you want to take a yeast one and a soil one, or one or the other?
That's a great question. And that's, again, a very individual thing. And some people fare better taking, I'll just use the S. boulardii every other day as opposed to every day. So this again comes down to experimentation. Maybe you do one on one day and the other on the other day. The most important thing is to pay attention to how you feel so that you can begin to identify cause and effect, which sometimes is really difficult. If you're taking a lot of things at once, you don't know what's providing the beneficial impact or what's causing the problem. So this is where experimentation comes into play, and also having a conversation with your hopefully integrative practitioner, functional medicine, holistic practitioner can help guide you through those questions. If you're over 40, there's a very good chance that you're not producing enough digestive enzymes. It just slows down in all of us as we age. So if you are over 40, consider taking a pancreatic enzyme about a half hour after eating to help you digest your food. What ends up happening is our food doesn't break down into the smaller component pieces for us to digest them properly. So enzymes will help you break that food down. The other thing is some people are deficient in stomach acid and can benefit from taking HCl, which is betaine hydrochloric acid, with pepsin is a great option. But again, it's experimentation. When you eat a high protein meal, if you know you don't digest protein very well, if you have trouble with it, it may be because you're not producing enough stomach acid. And just a little quick aside, most people, when they're experiencing what they think is excess acid, and they reach for a Tums or a Rolaids, or now we have more prescriptions for these proton pump inhibitors and so forth, to try to suppress that stomach acid, it's not that they're making too much, it's actually a sign that they're not making enough. It's counterintuitive, so this is where experimentation comes into play, that maybe you get some supplemental HCl, and when you have a big protein meal, during the middle of it, you just take one betaine HCl capsule and see how you feel. If you start to feel some tummy distress or some warmth in your stomach, you have plenty of stomach acid. You didn't need anything additional. If you don't feel it whatsoever, but you feel like maybe you're digesting your food better, then you did need it. So this is all about experimentation to see what works for you.
And you take it in the middle of your meal?
Some people recommend in the middle of the meal. Just take it along with your food when you remember to, but when you're eating a protein meal. So digestive enzymes for eating your main meals of the day can help you digest anything. The stomach acid is going to help break down protein meals. Last but certainly not least is the idea of relaxation. We are just on the run, on the go. We eat in our car. We eat while we're watching something violent on TV. We eat while we're arguing with our family and friends. This is not a good environment for how we eat our food. Our bodies go into fight-flight instead of the rest and digest that we learned about earlier. We need to be slowing down, and digestion begins when you smell your food. right? You're beginning to salivate, the digestive enzymes, they start in your mouth. So you're actually building up your enzymes. When you slow down and chew your food thoroughly, you're actually going to be digesting and absorbing your food much better than when you're rushing, when you're eating in your car, or when you're watching something that's really going to rile you up.
What about a starch like rice or potatoes?
Rice or potatoes? Where to start? So my comments on that are that these are what I would consider filler foods for most people. They're not essential nutrients for us. Rice is a grain. Rice is also contaminated with a lot of arsenic. So for people that have maybe a larger toxic load in their body, maybe to make sure you wash your rice before eating it. And guess what? Brown rice has more arsenic than white rice. So who'd have thunk? The paleo template that I'm suggesting here foregoes grains and starchy vegetables like potatoes. Just minimize them. They're really not, they don't offer a lot of nutritive value for you, and we want to make sure we're getting as much nutrition into our bodies. So a plate might be a palm of your hand is the size of the amount of protein that you want to eat. As a rule of thumb, there's your protein: wild salmon, organic chicken, grass-fed, grass-finished beef, etc. Right? And then the rest of it, if you want 3 things on your plate, because we like to have enough on our plate, instead of doing meat, potatoes, and a vegetable, do meat, vegetable, vegetable, or meat, salad, vegetable, so that it's 2 vegetables and the protein dish. And that's going to be aligned with this paleo template diet, and then the rest of it might be, I'll add olive oil on top to give my food that really wonderful mouthfeel, and it tastes so great and it's so good for you, and it's a healthy fat. So add more fat to your meal that way. Add avocado on top. That's how you balance your plate out. So back to the potatoes and rice, not essential for our nutrition. And if you're going to do it, just really consider moderation.
Palmer, and sweet potatoes?
Moderation too. So some people on sweet potatoes, they are wonderful, and other people who have metabolic syndrome or diabetes, or who are watching their blood sugar, you just need to be watching your starch and your carbohydrate loads. So it's an individual thing, and some people do really well with it. Just make sure you're adding your pasture butter, your ghee, which is what I eat. So this is another aside. I don't do well with cow dairy, but I do eat organic ghee, which is clarified butter, and it tastes fantastic. And when you cook eggs in ghee, it's a wonderful thing. So we just learned about what are the substitutes. And if you're going to have some sweet potato, instead of sitting down and having a whole large one, maybe you have a third of one, or maybe just a half, and balance it out with a lot of leafy green vegetables. Does that make sense?
Are beets kind of the same way? Are they high in glycemic index because they're kind of sweet also?
Yeah.
Like a sweet potato?
So root vegetables like carrots and beets and potatoes, they're all in the root vegetable family. They're grown underground. So when you think about vegetables and which ones to have more of and which ones to minimize, think about what grows above ground versus what grows underground. The ones that grow underground have more sugar in them, so just minimize it. I'm not saying don't eat beets. I'm just saying if you're going to have a salad, have a lot of different types of lettuces, maybe some arugula, and maybe some spinach, and maybe you're going to mix in some butter lettuce, and have fun with it. You've got wonderful farmers markets. Find the leafy green things, experiment with them. That's how you're going to increase your fiber. That's how you're going to make your gut bugs really, really happy. And then sprinkle in the color, because this is what, it's more important to count the rainbow, the colors in the rainbow, than it is to count calories. So think about how much color you're getting in a salad, for example. Do you have any orange in there? Maybe some orange peppers, or yellow peppers. They're wonderful, or yellow squashes, a few of those. Just mix it up so that you're really getting a representation. Purple cabbage, fantastic. Slice it up really thin, add that to a salad. It's a great way to get more color